Good afternoon, everyone. Before I start my piece, I just want to share a quick story. Once upon a time, there was a little girl born in Zimbabwe, surrounded by trees, green, the sun and warmth. She had the most beautiful childhood, and this little girl loved being African. Everything about being African was wonderful. Seeing family, friends, the smell, the food, it was perfect. But one day, this little girl was rushed and brought to the UK, 2002, age 9, to a new place with new faces, new smells, and definitely not the same warmth. This piece is entitled Roots. I remember it well. Year 7, Miss Adams' class, and it was time to take the register. Sue Adams, here. John Cambridge, here. Michaela Fields, here. I noticed the alphabetical order. And then she said my first name, Chauntelle, and paused. Long enough for it to be noticed. And then she started stuttering and stumbling and fumbling on syllables, and I could hear the echo of the other children sniggering and giggling, until she eventually said something that I don't even know because she was mumbling, but I just sheepishly said, here. And that was the beginning. And what she didn't conceive is that she planted a seed, and a few months later, I birthed an identity crisis. And my parents were now faced to raise a child that they could no longer identify with because I hated being African. And there was this chaos within, from the young girl who I was, who I am, and who I wanted to be. See, it wasn't cool being African back then. There was no Burna Boy, no Wizkid, no Thames. There was no Afro beats, no Afro swing. Being African meant that you had ashy skin. It meant that you were poor and that your mum had AIDS. It meant that you had AIDS. It meant that you were cousins with those children they saw on TV screens with flies on their face. There was nothing glamorous about being African. It was deemed as a big disgrace. And so you had to forget your roots in order to fit in. And the funny thing is, it wasn't white people or Asian people who I experienced racism from. It was from people who looked like me, who had the same color skin as me, who had the same ancestors, who shared the same experiences as me. Africans versus Jamaicans. But we didn't know then what we know now, so let's fast forward to present day. See, it took a long time for me to appreciate my culture. And to many people, I am not as African as I should be. To my extended family, I don't try hard enough to be as African as I could be. But I am just happy that I have reached a point in my life where if I could choose to be any nationality, it is African that I would be. And who knew? Who knew that little 12-year-old girl would grow up to write a poem like this? Who knew that I would grow up and have 2 beautiful African kids? You see, no matter how prominent the westernized tree stands, the most important thing of anything living and growing is the roots. That's why we water roots. And I water mine by cooking African food, having African friends, listening to African music. See, my roots are embedded underneath my melanin soil. And the most important thing of anything living and growing are the roots. So don't let the noise steal the richness of your culture. Don't let them colonize your being. You are a beautiful, wonderful human being. And remember, your African traits are beautiful. That African nose, the African hair, your African skin is beautiful. So whether you were born in Africa or not, whether you identify as African or not, whether you were born right here in Wolverhampton, just remember that wherever you're from, your roots are embedded underneath your soil. And the most important thing of anything living and growing are the roots. So please, water your roots. I stand before you today, 32, proud to be African. My name is Chauntelle Madondo, born in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, and I am proud of my roots.